Hello and welcome to Between the 20s, still in quarantine. I'm Aaron, Bryce joining me today, along with the D3 Khalil Mack once again. Ben Christensen back with us. Ben, how you doing out there in Illinois?
We're doing great. A little rainy out here, but we're doing great.
That's great. That's great. Did you hear apparently J.B. Pritzker, or whoever's the governor out there, is urging baseball players to get back
I already
on the field?
apologized for it. That's the Illinois politician way, man. Just like speaking out of pocket, issuing apologies days after.
Anyway, Bryce, how are things going in New Jersey? I've heard that apparently, according to some New Jersey official, that there is an unprecedented amount of urine and feces found in New Jersey parks due to the closure of bathrooms. But how are you?
I didn't
That's just
hear
Jersey,
that.
man.
And I was
That's
at a
not
park
special.
today because they just reopened the parks. So I went today. I'll be on the lookout for that next time. But it's been like
I checked the
70
shoes.
and sunny. It's great. So I just sit on my deck and read all day because no classes.
But you got work, so.
I do work. It's true. I do that.
And Amir, are you still mad that Tom Brady, as Peyton Manning suggests?
What?
You didn't see Peyton Manning trash talking?
Telling him about how he broke into someone's house?
Yeah, no, he said it has to be
And
held.
about his golf skill.
Yeah, he wanted the golf match to be held at a place like Denver or Boston, where they hate Tom Brady.
Oh man, whatever, man. They're gonna get kicked. They're gonna get crushed. Like Tiger is so much better than Phil, and Peyton's had like 2 extra years to work on his golf game, whereas Tom Brady's been throwing passes. So,
Mike, you must be ecstatic. This is the first time in a while golf is must-see TV. It's the only sports on.
It's true.
Outside of like
It's true.
the KBO. You been watching the KBO on ESPN at 1 a.m.?
I have not. No, I have not. I actually, when I'm up at 1 a.m., which I usually am, I'm hopefully doing better things. But
I don't know if
anyway,
your econ piece that counts as better things, Mike. Not gonna lie.
Well, but quickly on the Tampa Bay note, actually, so as always, the Vetter brothers are trying to divide the Giants season tickets, and one of my dad's brothers goes,
If you're allowed in.
yeah, pending a lot of things. Granted, there are a lot more bigger concerns going on, but he goes,
this is probably number one.
he goes, I just talked to my son Gavin, and he goes, he wants the Buccaneers game.
They're prime time now, man. They got a ton of prime time games. They're the face of the NFL.
He wants the Buccaneers game. Yeah, so
That's funny.
there we have. But anyway, today we have and the Cowboy game. It happens. Just want those two.
Cowboy game.
Just those two. That's right.
Without Dak, though, what's the point of watching the Cowboys without Dak?
Andy Dalton. Hello.
Dak's not even the best quarterback on his team anymore.
All right.
Say
guys.
the NFL memes.
Jason Garrett left, and so they replace him with the guy who looks just like him. At the quarterback position, at least. Anyway, that's enough. Today we have a big show coming at you today. The top 5 running backs of all time. Very exciting stuff. Very exciting. If you can't tell, we are running low on content here. Now that all sports have paused for about 2 months. We're kind of digging deep into the barrel. So we'll start with number 5, and we'll start with our guest. Ben, who is your 5th best running back of all time?
The number 5 spot was a hard one to decide. You got a lot of running backs like AP, Eric Dickerson, Marcus Allen, a lot of guys I really wanted to put in there, but I had to go with LaDainian Tomlinson.
Whoa.
10-year career. We saw one of an all-time season from him when he was throwing up 28 rushing touchdowns in a season. He captured that elusive MVP for a running back, which is pretty hard to do, especially he was kind of at the beginning when people started to pass a little bit more, yet he was really good out of the backfield catching the ball too. 2-time rushing leader, 1 MVP, 1 offensive player of the year, 13,684 rushing yards, just good guy to be number 5. His main flaw on his resume is he only had 5 Pro Bowls and 3 first-team All-Pro selections.
And you can say not much success in the playoffs, but
not much yet.
That's not much on him.
Not great.
It's not exactly his fault.
That's a lot on Phil
I
Rivers.
think that's I don't know.
Those are his two major faults. Just not a great win, not a much of a winner.
If you guys are counting that whole team matters stuff, then I want to hear Reggie Wayne or Marvin Harris on either one of your wide receivers next time.
We won't.
I don't know. They have a Super Bowl.
They probably won't.
You'll be surprised. They're like 9th and 10th, and then
yeah, and we're
all-time
looking for the
receiving yards.
top 5. That would be
Oh
8
my
people are ahead of them already. I could pick.
Yeah, but do they all have a Super Bowl?
Oh man.
We'll see.
Anyway, Bryce, how about you? Start off with the B-boys.
So I'm with Ben. This was a tough choice. This was a very tough choice. Ben you threw out a couple names. Marcus Allen, would love to put him in there. Eric Dickerson. I mean, you're talking about the single season rushing record with Eric Dickerson. It's a good shout. Thurman Thomas, somehow underrated playing with the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins. But to me, Ben, it came down to a 2-horse race. Your guy like Danny Tomlinson and Adrian Peterson. And I'm actually going to go with Adrian Peterson here.
Whoa.
I love LaDainian. Absolutely love LaDainian. The best fantasy player I've ever owned, ever. He was great. Talking about 28 rushing touchdowns in a season. Absurd. But Adrian Peterson has one more rushing leader season in an era when the passes become even more so. Granted, he did play for the Vikings, which was always run first with him, but still, 3-time rushing leader. He also has an MVP in 2012. Comeback player of the year in 2012. Coming off that ACL, that's still a remarkable accomplishment. The main difference between the two of these guys, LaDainian has more rushing yards. LaDainian has more receiving yards and significantly more receiving touchdowns. But Adrian Peterson just has that crazy longevity. This is now his 13th season, and just partially his story and how absolutely rock solid he's been for the better part of a decade puts him at the number 5 spot for me, barely edging out LaDainian Tomlinson.
He was probably my number 6 as well. I've seen enough of him running over the Bears. I think I remember a 296-yard rushing day from him once. That was sight to see. But his fumbling, his lack of hands, just couldn't put him above LT because of that.
That's fair. It's totally. These guys were like neck and neck. I really came to this decision right before we started the show.
Bryce making decisions right here. I'd like to also throw in, character clause, as Bryce was talking about before. LaDainian Tomlinson won the Walter Payton Man of the Year Award in 2006 as well.
He did. That is true. But AP does have the Rookie
Hall
of the
of
Year.
Fame.
AP is the Rookie of the Year under his belt that LaDainian does not have if we're throwing accolades around.
This is true.
AP's also pretty good at switching up.
Stop.
On the field, like jukes and stuff.
Ouch. Oh, man. That hurt my fantasy team back then. So I agree with one of you. My pick is I'm siding with the football player. I gotta side with Ben here. I'm going with LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yes.
He was just a beast, man. Like he was really the second guy to bring in this new era of running backs. Like the first was kind of Marshall Faulk with all that receiving work to go with the rushing out of the backfield. But LT kind of really took it to the next level and kind of made this hybrid back what it is today. Like you have guys like Le'Veon Bell, guys like, of course, Christian McCaffrey. And now you're a lot of running backs. You got to look for guys that can both run and catch. And so I think a lot of that's about LT. So he's number 5. You guys hit the nail on the head with the other two guys. AP and Eric Dickerson were the other guys that I was thinking about. And I guess those can be our honorable mentions for this top 5, but I'm with LT as well.
No surprise here. I disagree with everybody.
Faulk there.
Mike,
sorry, Bryce. You go first. You threw out Marshall Faulk.
All I was going to say is I love that you threw out Marshall Faulk. He was really the guy. I mean, he's got almost 7,000 receiving yards and 36 receiving touchdowns in his career. I mean, if we expand this to 10, Marshall Faulk absolutely in that top 10.
Definitely. Greatest show on turf. He was the main guy.
So I guess he's not appearing higher on your list. Interesting.
Mike's big changes right now. He's like, uh-oh.
At number 5 on my list, I have more of a peak player, but the player who, with Marshall Faulk, shares the record for most Offensive Player of the Year wins, and that is the illustrious Earl Campbell, who, yes, he didn't.
I love it.
Really? Dang.
He did not eclipse 10,000 career rushing yards, but he did have an MVP, 5 Pro Bowl selections, 3 All-Pro selections, and then, like I said, the 3 Offensive Player of the Year award wins. So that's my number 5 there, sneaking in. But I definitely appreciate your guys' opinions.
No,
I
that's
wanted to
a
find.
fair
I
way
like
to
that
look
one.
at it.
It's
Looking
an
at
interesting shout.
MVPs and Offensive Players of the Year are probably
Yeah.
pretty important to be able to make a distinction between running backs because a lot of these guys are pretty similar when you look at numbers to an extent and TDs, and even then those numbers aren't exactly fair to judge a guy's skill. So I mean, those Offensive Player of the Year awards, like that's a valid accolade for running backs, I think.
Yeah.
And depending on how much weight you want to put on it, Earl Campbell has the same number of Pro Bowls and first-team All-Pro appearances as LaDainian Tomlinson. 5 Pro Bowls and 3 first teams.
I don't know. I guess he just didn't have the longevity for me. A lot of these other guys went for a lot longer. Like Mike said, he's sub 10K rushing yards. So,
But he did do those 9,400 yards in 7 seasons.
Yeah.
All right. So number 5 is on the board. We'll turn it around and go the opposite order now. We'll start with Amir.
all right. So my number 4 is Ben. You know this guy very well. I'm going Walter Payton at number 4. I'm throwing it back, boys. He's just a beast. I don't even know what to say about him. I mean, almost 1,700 yards. It looks like he's second all time in total rushing yards, 110 rushing touchdowns, and he actually has almost 5,000 receiving yards, which for back in his years, that was kind of unprecedented. So I mean, he kind of paved the way, and of course, there's a Walter Payton Man of the Year award, so he's known for that as well. He was just a killer on the ground.
He won it, actually.
Oh, really?
Ben, how about you?
My number 4, maybe this might be a little low for some of you guys, maybe not. I think Barry Sanders is my number 4. Barry, crazy. He had 15,000 career rushing yards. That puts him number 3, maybe number 4. I'm not sure if Frank will maybe overtake him. Maybe he will one in the next 5 years or something. Good amount of TDs. Everything was great. He just, to me, what's important for these distinction of running backs is to make sure they have a great peak. Is I like to look at MVPs, Offensive Rookie of the Years, overall team success. The farthest the Lions ever got, similar to LT, the success of their team, the farthest they got during his era was the NFC Championship game when they got blown out 40-something to 10. I think it was 41-10. Barry's great. His skill is great. However, blame it on the Lions, blame it on him. They really didn't have too much success with him. He was the 4-time rushing leader. He did win a Rookie of the Year. And he did make 2 Offensive Players of the Year. However, the MVP did elude him, which I think is important when you're trying to look at the very small differences between some of these all-time running backs.
Definitely fair. Yeah, definitely fair. Rice?
And I totally get that, but I actually have a bit of the reverse logic here. To me, a running back is much more about individual accolades, which you were talking about. So you mentioned team success. I'm not sure how much that always falls on the running back, especially in more of the modern NFL, which kind of starts with Dan Marino. It's much more about the quarterback. If you have a quarterback that wins, then if you have a quarterback that wins, your running back's probably going to win too. I mean, just looking more recently, this year Pat Mahomes is the quarterback and Damian Williams just won a Super Bowl. I'm not sure Damian Williams will ever be said in the same sentence as Barry Sanders again. So with that,
I completely agree.
Who
was that second running back you mentioned? I heard Damian Williams and then
some guy named Barry Sanders. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Some dude for the Lions.
Yeah.
So with that logic in mind, I might get some homer hate here, but my number 4 is the career rushing yards and career rushing touchdowns leader, Emmitt Smith.
Oh, boy. He said that.
I do have him at 4. I do have him at 4.
Ben, I'm with you.
There's a couple things up here. Of course, he's got 18,000 rushing yards. It's absurd. Yeah. It's crazy. He's got 3,000 receiving yards playing with Troy Aikman, 164 rushing touchdowns. Just crazy. 4-time rushing leader. He's awesome. Does have an MVP, but so do 2 of the 3 guys that I have ahead of him. To me, one of the big differentiators. The third guy I think is the best running back of all time. Is a little preview.
Here we go.
But Emmitt Smith, one of the big differentiators
That's right, Bryce.
for me.
Frank Gore does not have an MVP.
Emmitt Smith, he's got 8 Pro Bowls and 4 first-team All-Pros, fewer than everybody else on this list. If you're talking about recognition for who you are as a running back, I think a lot of that is going to come from the AP and who they say is the best of their position at a given time. And Emmitt Smith, while fantastic, was still overshadowed by the AP poll by Barry Sanders fairly frequently. And I really think if you take Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith, the 2 premier running backs of the 1990s, and you swap them, their careers, I think, would look very, very different.
I'm going to agree with most of what Bryce said. I have Emmitt Smith in my 4th spot as well, but I'm not going to tout so much the Barry Sanders comparison.
Look at these Giants haters. Look at these Giants.
Yes, I totally agree. I totally agree with the Emmitt Smith here. Like Bryce said, he doesn't necessarily have the accolades that some of the other guys that are higher on my list have. So a lot of the shared logic there, but I won't go touting Barry Sanders for reasons that'll become a little obvious later in the show.
Good for you, kid. Way to go, Mike. Way to go.
Anyway, Ben, we'll turn to you to start the top 3.
I just can't believe you guys don't even have Emmitt Smith as 1 or 2. Like, that's just, like, absolutely absurd.
Ridiculous.
Like, just – I'll get to that later. I will get to that later. So, Brett, I want to go back to your point. You said a lot of times it's hard to put the team's success on the running back when a lot of it's due to the quarterback.
Yes.
So, and that's a completely fair
and
point.
just to talk about the success of the Cowboys quarterback that time, apparently Troy Aikman is the number 1 guy in terms of price, a football player in terms of price on Cameo now. So he's really made it big time.
Okay.
So if you want to look at 2 running backs during not the same era, but similar eras that both had franchises of histories of like horrible QB play, I would like you to meet the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. And one of those players has an MVP in his name. He has a Super Bowl. He was only a one-time rushing leader, but he is he's the number 2 on all time on rushing yards. And he also, as Amir said earlier, 4,500 receiving yards in a time where throwing the ball wasn't a huge thing, which further emphasizes how much he was the entire offense. And he really was, as a running back, able to will the Bears to success. He wasn't as a big of a deal on the Super Bowl team, but Walter Payton is my number 3 because he was a running back that actually held a franchise afloat in terms of wins, regardless of how bad the quarterback play was. Darian Walter, their overall offense is like, I can't say I'm an expert. I know neither of them had incredible quarterbacks, especially during the prime of their career. But Walter Payton was able to get that MVP. He was still able to rack up 16,000 yards over 12 seasons. Maybe not as impressive as Barry's 15,000 over 9 it looks like.
Or 10,
but still, Walter was a tank. He carried teams. He made teams win. He was a brute. He was a workhorse. He's my number 3.
So Walter locks in at number 3 for.
Although no one's going to say the '85 Bears were carried by Walter Payton.
Walter. That is like he. But the years before, he didn't carry them to a Super Bowl. But the years before, like when he won the Super Bowl. They won the Super Bowl when Walter was out of their prime. He was still solid. He was a great player, but he was not in his prime before he had an elite defense like that. He was the reason Bears were winning games. Not Super Bowls, but winning games.
There you have it. I
like it.
You.
I'm up. Okay. My number 3 is kind of a spicy take. I'm feeling a little bit bad. Actually, not really. Put Jim Brown, number 3.
Ooh. Why is that spicy?
Because I feel like it's pretty low, man. I don't know. Jim Brown's the first guy to ever do it. Back in the 60s, he was the whole offense because all they did was run back then. And it was the Jim Brown show. I mean, the whole team's named after him now. But Brown, look at Jim Brown. I mean, he was awesome. His
Are they named after Paul Brown?
Yeah, I know. That was the accuracy on that one.
That was a joke. Guys, come on.
He played for the Cleveland Browns.
No, I know. That was the joke. Never mind.
Okay. I got to be honest, I know I'm the guy that we have in the middle because he knows the least about football. I was a little confused about that. And then when I saw he played for the Cleveland Browns, I was like, I got my answer.
Guys, this guy was a beast. 9 Pro Bowls, 8 All-Pros, and back in the 60s, 1,200 yards was a number that was not even – no one got anywhere close until 70s and 80s. So Jim Brown just paved the way for the rest of the NFL.
Makes sense. Can't complain. Bryce, how about you at number 3?
Ben, you said it absolutely perfectly. Walter Payton willed his teams in the 70s and early 80s. He is also my number 3. I mean, just the stats speak for themselves. Playing in an era when it was still more about the run, and he had no quarterback. Sorry, Jim McMahon. But, I mean, think about it. He's got over 21,000 yards from scrimmage. He's got 125 total touchdowns, right? He's got 15 receiving touchdowns at that time for a running back is pretty significant. There aren't too many guys that played in that era that have too many more. Thurman Thomas started after him at 23. It is pretty crazy what he was able to do. 16,000 rushing yards, trailing only the guy at number 4, Emmitt Smith. He, like Emmitt Smith does, Ben, you said it, he does have that MVP. The one knock on him that does leave him at 3 instead of maybe 2 or 1 is the fact that he only led the league in rushing once. But he did win an MVP and Offensive Player of the Year, which it's crazy.
It's crazy that the number 2 guy on rushing yards led the league once, which in one sense, it's like, okay, he didn't peak as high, but he was that good for that long and that consistent that his performance was just a flat line of just excellence.
That is part of the reason why I also have Adrian Peterson at 5 and Frank Gore at 1.
Goat Gore.
Oh boy, I'm going to get roasted for this pick, but here we go. At number 3, I'm still going by one of my favorite metrics by which to view these players.
Rush per attempt?
How many Offensive Player of the Year awards have they won?
Oh, no.
And I'm going to go with the only other player with 3, Marshall Faulk. My number 3rd best running back of all time.
The man's got a formula. He's sticking to it. I actually respect that. I'm kind of bouncing around on on my metrics, but
give me a sec.
36 receiving touchdowns. Oh my God.
I mean, 100 career touchdowns.
Your whole system's gonna break down in the next 2 times.
He had he's won the Super Bowl, so you can't get on him for that. And he won 3 consecutive Offensive Player of the Year awards because in those 3 years, he averaged 5.5, 5.4, and 5.3 yards per rushing attempt and led the league with 18 rushing touchdowns in 2000.
The fact that Payton not on your top 5 is crazy. That's what this means. That's what this pick means.
Is it?
Then you don't have Jim Brown, which is even worse.
You got to keep thinking there, buddy.
There are only 2 slots, Mike. There are only 2 slots. Okay, then you don't have Barry Sanders. I don't know. There are 3 players that deserve to be, and you only have 2 slots left.
There were
it's going to be Jim Brown because Jim Brown's in an era before Offensive Player of the Year existed.
There's 3 guys you had to have on there, and you might be missing.
And you're missing one of them. Oh my God.
Maybe 2. We don't know yet. Mike's off the deep end.
Oh my God.
That's why you haven't thought about it yet.
Okay. Oh Lord, Mike.
Randy Jacobs,
Tiki Barber at 1.
Tiki Barber.
No, Rondé. Saquon Barkley guy. Saquon Barkley at number 1.
Oh,
we're just going by talent.
Absolutely.
And besides, if we're looking at all-time rushing yards, Marshall Faulk is still 12th. He's not horrible.
Okay,
is that that's over a much shorter career. He's not a compiler. He's got a high peak, and I think that's very impressive.
Well, so Mike, do you discredit longevity as a running back? It's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's what do you value longevity?
I mean, a lot of this ranking comes down to what we value, and I think it's cool. It's
fair. I'm just curious.
Yeah. And I think that personally, I'm valuing peak a little bit more than you guys are, and you guys are valuing longevity more. It totally makes sense.
Yeah, I was curious.
But now we move on to number 2. If you're thinking about leaving out, you got to stay to see where I left off my list. Face it, we've locked you in. Bryce, who do you have at your number 2 spot?
This one
looks like you're still thinking about it, which is not.
No, I'm not. I'm just looking at some stats here just to make sure what I say is relatively substantiated. To me, these next 2 guys, I think we all pretty much know who they are. This was very, very tough. In some cases. This was very tough. I alluded to it earlier, who I have at 1. So number 2 is Jim Brown. Jim Brown is, there's no other word for it other than exceptional. You want to talk about whoever at Jim Brown earlier, I don't remember, was talking about how, you feed the beast, it was time to run. Yes, Amir, absolutely time to run. Jim Brown at 1 yard short of 2,500 receiving yards and 20 receiving touchdowns in an era when they just fed him. I mean, if you want to talk about it, Jim Brown played an era with fewer games. He only played 14 or 12 games in each season, but he led the league in carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in 9 seasons. So he did receive the ball. He received the ball in a handoff more times than anybody else. He led the league in rushing every year except one that he was in the NFL. This guy just defines exceptional. 3-time MVP. He is just he is great. And the main separating factor that I saw between him and the guy who I haven't won is just going to be some era talk here. Whereas Jim Brown's playing much more of a running era, but still to put up 12,000 yards in 9 seasons with 126 all-purpose touchdowns and 20 of those coming through the air, exceptional.
Big flaw with Jim Brown, though. No Super Bowls. How do you defend that?
Well, considering I had Emmitt Smith at 4, I think I'm okay with it.
Well, he also predated the Super Bowl.
It was also an
He
NFL
did.
championship. That
Mike, how do you feel about him with the no offensive player of the years?
That's true. That's true. I don't know how I feel. Ahmed,
he's like Bill Russell. He doesn't have any Finals MVPs. Like, what's that about? My number 2 is all-time leading rusher, Emmitt Smith. Leads the NFL history in rushing, in touchdowns. Longevity, you got it. Peak, you got it. This guy was a beast.
You got it.
3 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys back in the 90s, back when the Cowboys peaked. Now they are horrible, thank God. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. This guy was just insane. Like, he just went for forever. He played for 14 years, 18,000 yards. Crazy. And it's 2,000 yards past the second guy, Walter Payton, and that's a big gap between 1 and 2 in terms of rushing yards.
Now that I think about it, also, I could make an argument those Super Bowls were a lot on the defense, though. A lot of defense helped those Cowboys teams. That team.
Really? Not Troy Aikman or Michael Irvin?
I'm just saying. They're
triplets.
At least that's what I've heard. Ben, you would know.
Number 1 and number 2 were hard to differentiate because there's things that I value, like the longevity, like what's your total yards, what's your TDs, your accolades. But I settled on my number 2 as Jim Brown. One of the best ways to weigh eras is look at MVPs, Offensive Player of the Year awards. You can see how you're valued relative to the rest of your competition. 3 MVPs. I believe there's only 3 people with 3 MVPs ever. I believe it's Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Jim Brown. And it's probably never going to happen again, especially for a running back. It's hard to get multiple MVPs, let alone 3. 8-time rushing leader, feed the beast. Dude just was he was the best at the time. You gave him the ball. He helped your team win. It was that simple. The only thing that makes it hard is he only played 8 years. That's probably, if he played longer than that with maybe longer seasons, he'd probably be a little higher. But other than that, it's just, dude was too good for his time to not be top 2.
Very good point. And I'm going to take your number 3 and put it in my number 2 spot, Ben. I have Walter Payton penciled in here. Led the league in yards from scrimmage twice, and led the league in rushing attempts for 4 consecutive years, 1976 to 1979, which I think are both very impressive accolades. Obviously, he checks off both the MVP box, the Super Bowl box. He's won 5 All-Pro selections and 9 Pro Bowl selections. I mean, I think it's well warranted number 2 spot. But now, we're all waiting for this moment. It is the big list completion. Who have we left off? What's going on? Who do we feel is the best running back of all time? We'll start in alphabetical order with Amir.
Oh, by first name. Okay, I like it. You guys know who I'm picking. It has to be Barry Sanders. This guy's a beast.
Oh boy.
10 seasons, 15,000 yards. He averaged 100 rushing yards per game over his career. He had 99 rushing touchdowns. That's a wash. And every season that he was in the NFL, he made the Pro Bowl. 10 seasons, 10 Pro Bowls. I mean,
Most Pro Bowls amongst all running backs,
most
actually.
Pro Bowls, exactly. I don't know what to say. I mean, he was greatness for his entire career, and I mean, what more can you ask for? I guess a little bit of longevity, but
Wins.
10 years is enough. I don't know, man. Winning, yeah, but I don't know, man. The Lions are a horrible franchise. It's like, I don't know. You can't blame the
And
franchise.
I mean, can I though? I think I might. I just might do that actually.
I'm sure you will, man. I'm sure you will. But I don't know. It's not on the running back. It's on quarterback. It's on coach. Winning's not on the running back. He did his job, and I think he did the best out of anybody in NFL history. So, Barry Sanders.
Continue the alphabetical order, Trent Ben. You're up.
My number one, and I'm shocked no one else, it seems, is going to have this guy's number one. Emmitt Smith. You're talking a 14-year career, 18,355 rushing yards, number one. 164 rushing touchdowns, number one. Top that with about 11 receiving touchdowns. Not great, but doesn't matter. The offense was great. He had all the help he could ask for, which is fair. But there's probably not much better of a job he could have done. Pair that with 3 Super Bowls. He played his part. He was a workhorse. He had everything he asked for. He was part of incredible teams. He won. He scored. He got yards. He played for a while. There's nothing more Emmitt Smith probably could have done.
I can't hate on Emmitt Smith. I have him at 2, but I test on Barry Sanders. Just next level.
Bryce, how are your eyes looking up there?
Ben, you want to talk about a guy where there's nothing more he could have done? It's not his fault the Lions sucked. Barry Sanders.
Yes, baby.
He is just, before we even get into the stats, his highlights are next level. He was the first juke artist that I've seen. He blew everyone away with his speed, starting in Oklahoma, and then moving all the way through the NFL. Like you said it, the only thing more you could ask for from Barry Sanders is longevity. But let's be real, he did play for a decade. He played for 10 years. And Amer, you hit the nail right on the head. 10 years, 10 Pro Bowls. The only other player to make a Pro Bowl in every other season, in every of his seasons, Jim Brown, who I had at number 2. I just think it's exceptional what he did. Barry Sanders, 6 first-team All-Pros, trailing on this list only Jim Brown. 4-time rushing leader in a time when Emmitt Smith was there. Rookie of the Year, 2-time Offensive Player of the Year for my man Michael Vetter over there. 15,000 yards in 10 years paired with almost 3,000 receiving yards on a team with no quarterback. Granted, that might be a help to running back, but nevertheless, Barry Sanders was and is to me the greatest running back of all time from both a statistic standpoint. While he might be missing some of the career goals that Emmitt Smith has, he still put up crazy numbers. And just the eye test is real. Yeah. Barry Sanders was among the greatest shows on turf.
And my number one, I'm going back to the OG that several have mentioned before, but I think he is deserving of the number one spot, and that is Jim Brown, 3-time MVP winner.
I can't
Mike,
do this.
I thought you were about to say OJ when you said OG. I thought you were say OJ.
Who did Mike leave off then?
3-time MVP.
I mean, I don't think
9
that list
Pro Bowl
can get any worse.
Let him go.
8 All-Pros.
No Barry Sanders.
No Super Bowls, but an NFL championship.
Listen, guys, I love Barry, and the highlights are sick, and those are great. I just, whenever you're comparing all-time greats, you can look at any player on there, maybe not as much Jim Brown because he was so long ago. You can look at anyone's highlight tape when they're sick. And honestly, I probably agree with you. Barry Sanders probably has the best highlight tape. But for me, second to me, of course. Played 9 or 10 years. Maybe if Barry probably hit the 12-year marker similar to Peyton. Honestly, if Barry goes 2 more years, I probably have him above Peyton. There's it's just he only hit the 10-year marker, which is still a lot, which is why he's still number 4 for me all time. But it's just hard if you're going to make these small discernible differences. He already passed every running back for me. I want to see him. If he's not going to win, I want him to go down, just blowing his whole body out.
Spoken
You
like
better
a
be-
true
you better be-
defensive player.
He
Yeah.
better be carried off that damn field on a shield if he doesn't have a Super Bowl.
If
Didn't
it's
the
any
Lions?
defense, I had him at 6.
I don't. No, stop. I don't
Achilles
care
Barry
if it
Sanders
was
is
6 or
not in the
20,
top
Mike.
5.
Shut up.
Didn't
No, so here-
Barry?
I think-
Didn't Barry? Sorry, go ahead.
Bryce stated pretty well when he and Emmitt Smith are relatively interchangeable. Emmitt Smith has a Super Bowl
Okay, why is
So-
he not at 5? And why is Marshall Faulk at 3? Stop.
because they have the coveted 3-time Offensive Player of the Year.
Why is that a
wins.
coveted thing? I don't understand.
It's coveted.
Because I
Barry's
think-
got 2. Mike, Barry's got 2.
I know, but he doesn't have a Super Bowl, and that's one less than 3.
This is such a horrible.
I have a hypothetical question.
He also has
Hypothetical.
Earl Campbell doesn't even have 10,000 yards. I can't believe this is we're actually talking about.
I like the Earl Campbell shout.
No,
hypothetical
I
question.
know we.
If
I
you
can't believe we're
put
actually
if
talking
you
about this.
put Barry Sanders on the Cowboys, does he eclipse 18,000 yards?
Yes. No, he's because assuming
Probably. Like
he
probably.
plays 14
Yeah.
years, then yes. If he
Yeah,
plays
yeah.
10, probably not. But he would
Also-
obviously have 3 Super Bowls.
Marshall
To me,
Faulk
that
had
was part of the
more
equation because with the
touch-
running back talking about system, look at the Chiefs, right? The
Yeah,
current
and-
Chiefs talking about system.
But that's I feel like once you get to the point where it's like, oh, we'll swap him with it. It's like, yeah, like probably.
Fair.
But the thing is, it's not swapped, right? It's like this is kind of how it was, and like, is that the player's fault? No, it's not. And could you say like that's a stupid way to like rank them? Yeah, you could, and I would completely understand why you say, Ben, that's absolutely ridiculous. You're telling me you'd swap these guys that have identical stats, and that's okay? Sure. You're looking at very small differences when you're looking at the top people.
I don't even have a problem
These are
with Ben.
these
I
are
think
all splitting
4
hairs.
is
Like everything
on the low
everything
end.
1 to 7 or 1 to 8 is like splitting hairs. 8's like Marcus Allen or something, Eric Dickerson.
Yeah.
Those guys are all. I mean, they're Hall of Famers, all-time greats. You're splitting hairs between.
Especially with running
Guys.
backs, because for winning, you can really actually like put value on that as if you're making quarterbacks. Running backs, you're really like, which I get. But also, didn't Barry retire because he had some type of like salary issue with the Lions? He didn't have a great relationship with the front office, which is also
I don't think
another thing.
anyone did.
And
Are you
that's
thinking
what the
Calvin
Lions
Johnson?
made him pay back his money. No, Calvin Johnson did the same thing. So Calvin and Barry, they both retired early, which pissed off the Lions front office.
Oh,
So the Lions
okay.
made him pay the money back for the
okay,
signing.
so
bonus.
okay,
Great
Yeah,
franchise
so
up
like-
there in Detroit.
yeah.
It is
Take care of their players.
I mean, you're talking about two of the greatest players of all time, and you just mistreat them that way, and you can't build a winner. Crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely the franchise. How the cookie crumbles, man.
Ridiculous, man. Totally ridiculous. It's not even in the top 5. I'm so triggered, Mike.
To me, I was trying to get him in there, and I was
No,
like,
you
"No,
were
he
not."
doesn't fit. He doesn't fit."
I think you're trying to
you
find
were
every
not.
way to get him off the list.
I actually can't believe you did put Earl or above Perry. I mean, honestly,
fair,
am I being a
Marshall
homer
Faulk has
putting?
more touchdowns. If one touchdown qualifies as touchdowns, than Barry Sanders.
Okay, then why isn't
Oh,
John
rushing.
Higgins on your list? He has more touchdowns than Barry Sanders.
Yeah, but how many Offensive Player of the Year wins does he have?
Oh God.
You guys are really old guys. I think it's a fair metric, and he sticks to it relatively well. Like,
Okay, so what? Todd Gurley's on this list now because he has an Offensive Player of the Year award. I don't
no,
know.
here's the thing. That's why like when people argue championship, they're like, oh, so like you guys think Robert Horry's a great like? It's like no, it's like once you have a certain amount of like you're a top 10 rushing yards guy, you're a top 10 TDs guy, then you can start taking apart these things. There's like baseline stats, and then you go to the accolades.
Okay, but Earl Campbell at 9,000 is not like top 10.
Hey, I
rushing
don't know.
yards.
I'm not
That's
defending
ridiculous.
that one. I'm not defending that one, but I'm defending the use of accolades.
You can also totally defend Marshall Faulk. I mean, Marshall Faulk was the first true dual threat. back.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about just versatility,
I get it.
could see Marshall Faulk in the top 3.
I
If,
get
if you're
Marshall
really
Faulk.
prioritizing versatility. I mean, Marshall Faulk was effectively a slot receiver.
If LT, and I'm probably I might be overvaluing TDs too much too, because like that's kind of a randomness thing, and like that's a lot more of a team thing.
Yeah.
So is winning, which is why I'm picking it anyways. But like you could easily put Marshall Faulk as between like LT, AP, Marshall Faulk, like.
I think Dickerson's in
I'd
that
And
in that tier. I think Dickerson
and Marcus Allen. I think that set.
Yeah.
and Frank Gore.
Shout out Frank Gore.
Oh, for sure.
helium.
I think an interesting one that we didn't get to talk about is Curtis Martin. I mean, Curtis Martin's fifth on the all-time rushing yards list. He's got 3,300 receiving yards, but somehow only made one first-team All-Pro. Sixth in receiving yards?
Yeah, one first-team All-Pro, 5 Pro Bowls, only 90 touchdowns, which is actually just 9 less than Barry Sanders.
But he's got 100 all-purpose. I mean, I think the issue – Curtis Martin was
25
great.
more than Earl Campbell. So are we really doing this right now, Mike?
But how many offensive player
of the year awards? There we go. Who didn't have Emmitt Smith in their top 2 though? It was
me and Mike.
No, I had him at 3. I had him at 2. Sorry, I had him at 2. These 2, because they're Giants fans, had him at 4, which is ridiculous.
Are you really holding it against? Like, I know, like, I'm holding it against Barry that his team sucked, but like, are we really going to hold it that much against the all-time yards and TD leaders that his team was that good?
It's not exactly why I did it. I'm looking more at.
Maybe if I send you a highlight tape, you'll rank them higher. That's what.
To me, it was comparing between these 2, right? And we talk about accolades that they had. Yes, Emmitt Smith has the records. Emmitt Smith played for 14 years, and Barry played for 10. So Emmitt Smith had 4 more years to accrue those yards.
How is that negative against him, though? I would say he played 4 more years.
I'm not saying it's negative, but I'm saying he's got those 4 extra years. But somehow Barry still out Pro Bowled and out All-Pro'd him, and in 4 fewer seasons, and they played at the same time.
When they were playing at the same time, it was pretty clear that Barry Sanders was the better running back.
Yeah, and because he's a better running back, I put him higher on my list.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. Yeah, no, that's fair, I guess. But yeah.
Basically, the way I broke down my top 3 was, if you want to break it down by era or decade, however you want to call it, my top 3 are the who I feel are the best running back in each of their respective eras. Jim Brown in the ground and pound time, Walter Payton in the we're trying to figure out the forward pass, and then Barry Sanders in when passing was starting to become a thing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. Also, like, I really wanted to just find a reason to put Walter ahead of Barry, to be completely honest. And I think I made a valid argument. I respect that. You're a Bears fan.
Look at all these homers. Look at all these homers around.
Could have given you some help there, man.
Walter Payton had 4,500 receiving yards in 1978.
Yeah, but that's what I was gonna say. Like, I was looking for a reason, and I think I found a valid one. Like, Mike even said to think about the carries and all that shit. Yeah, and a Super Bowl and an MVP. Like, here's my question, Nick. So if Barry was such a clearly better running back, where's Barry's MVP?
I mean, Emmitt Smith doesn't have an MVP.
Yeah, he does. 1993.
Emmitt's got one in 1993.
Oh, man. Okay, I'm capping.
During their primes. MVP. Just throwing that out.
During their primes. I mean, yeah,
I do get that. 1 year does not a career make.
So where
Emmitt Smith's offensive player of the years? I don't know.
I think you can point out really in any sport. You can point out one-off MVP. I'm not saying Emmitt Smith is a one-off MVP.
Yeah, for sure.
Great running back. You can always point out anomalous years in any sport. I mean, probably the craziest anomaly, one of the craziest ones I've ever seen, is Chris Coughlin won Rookie of the Year in baseball for the Cubs, for the Marlins, and he was like the next big thing, and it fell off the face of the earth.
And
I think Rookie of the Year is different. Rookie of the Year is
that's true.
I guess
that happens all.
And also, if you look at their overall rushing leaders, Barry led it 4 times. Emmitt Smith led it 4 times. And again, like, they were at that same era. And if you think about it too, Barry was getting the ball every time. Smith, he was like, yeah, don't get me wrong, it definitely helps to have a good quarterback, a good receiver, good everything. That helps, but he was splitting the rock a little bit, and like he made the absolute most of everything you could have possibly given him. Mm-hmm. And so did Barry. Barry made the most, but he just wasn't. Yeah, he was in a better situation, and overall that led to a longer, more successful career in the total numbers, which tough on Barry. Barry should have gone to the Cowboys in free agency.
You know, I don't think we've ever had a consensus. All 4 of us agree on any of these lists.
One thing I do want to mention, I just looked it up because I was curious. Emmitt Smith's MVP year, 1993, was the only year Barry Sanders played fewer than 15 games. Barry Sanders played 11 games that year and rushed for 1,100 yards. Emmitt Smith played 16 and rushed for 1,300 yards.
Okay, that's crazy.
Really?
He averaged he had played
100
11
yards a
games.
game.
That's crazy.
And
He's
1,100
awesome.
yards.
That's awesome.
So, again, not that you can have revisionist history, but the 1 year Emmitt Smith won his MVP was the 1 year Barry Sanders, I assume, got hurt, but he only played 11 games.
I'm curious what the record was that year, though.
What the rushing record was?
No. What the Lions' record was that year? Because he probably, if they weren't winning, depends how much they won, right? But
yeah,
1993 Lions, 10-6.
10-6, and that's without Barry for 5 games. So
yeah.
And so that concludes our top 5 running backs of all time. Thank you so much for watching. Check us out in all the usual places. And until next time, when we introduce our top 5 wide receivers of all time, we've been Between the 20s.